Hello, book besties. It's Dano from Books by Dano, and today I'm doing my March wrap up and April setup in my reading journal. So, first off, you can see I wanted to put in my book battle pick, but I forgot to print an extra copy of Serpent and the Wings of Night. So, I need to make sure I go back and do that so that it is in there, ready to go for the battle, because that was my top pick of March. And now I'm going in with my headers for the March wrap up. And hopefully next month this will be a little bit easier. March was the last month that I had stuff pre-made from like the start of the year, and so I had bits and pieces cut all over the place, and that just annoys the crap out of me because I couldn't find anything. I was trying to like put bits together because I'd cut it up to be able to store it easier, but at least next month I can just print what I need and I'm good to go. As you can see, I'm stealing stuff from different spots. Anyway, I had a pretty good reading time in the month of March. So I read 10 books in all. I started with Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. That was the first book I read, and I loved rereading this series. Just, it has that place in my heart. It's what got me into reading, and it's my goal for this year to reread the entire series. So finally sat down and read number one and of course gave it 5 stars, but I didn't want to include it in my best like books, so I didn't put it up for the battle and it didn't get my favorite just because, you know, it's one I've read a lot of before. I know I love it. I don't need confirmation about that. Up next, I then read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I enjoyed this book a lot. It did take me a little bit to get used to the writing style, being a journal entry style, and getting around how there was still characters talking in it. It sort of broke the fourth wall of it meaning to be journal entries. Like, I didn't believe that someone writing a journal entry would talk about what someone else said in the way it was done. Like, it wouldn't be spoken about as if they were just talking to the person. You would generally write, well, this person told me, rather than verbatim what they said. So I enjoyed it. I did like where the story went. I am looking forward to seeing how what was revealed in this book will then shape the next. I think it's a trilogy, so how it will shape the next one and then the one after that. But I'm not too sure when I'm going to get to it. Hopefully soon. Anyway, I enjoyed that. I also gave that 4.5 stars. Then I read The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. I love this book. I gave it a 4 stars. It was really nice seeing her backstory and what she did before the Gilmore Girls. I didn't realize she had such a big part in Broadway and how that all came about and how certain musicals were created. Like, she had a big role in what was the musical? A Chorus Line. That's the musical. So, yeah, it was really interesting to hear all that from her. I would have liked more about the Gilmore Girls and all of that and how it was on set, but I guess being the third Gilmore Girls, it was designed to be more of her backstory before the show. But yes, I did really enjoy seeing all that. So as you can see, I've just written out the 10 books that I read in March there, and now I'm going to start putting down all of my book covers, which represent my favorite book of the month, honorable mention, the first book I read, the last book I read, as well as the longest and the shortest. So on this bottom line, I have the longest book I read, A Serpent and Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. And then the shortest is The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. The next line up above that, I put my favorite book, which again is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And then an honorable mention I put in as Deep End by Ellie Hazelwood. And then at the very top, I put the first read, which was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and the last read, which is Deep End. So that's what I'm putting over on that left-hand side. I'm just a little bit slow at writing, and then also trying to map it out so it all fits nicely. But getting back to the next book that I read was I'd Tell You I Love You, but then I'd have to kill you by Ali Carter. I read this book years and years ago, and the entire series has been sitting on my shelf to get through and just read. So I thought, why not? I would give it a go. It was a very easy read. I'm pretty sure I read it within one morning. Uh, I was just doing sprints and just smashed it out. And it was good. It was a 4-star read. I probably would have enjoyed it more back when I originally read it, or if I was younger reading it, just because it is a younger YA book. I think the characters in it are about 14, 15, and that's how it reads. So it's just not my age demographic anymore. But I sort of do relate to it. Going to an all-girls school my entire life, I can understand how it's different when guys come around and sort of you don't feel comfortable enough chatting with them and things like that. So I could relate. Okay. Up next, I'm going to start working on the right-hand side of my page, which is where I put in all my statistics. So you'll see things like my audience demographics, my star ratings, and everything. So as I slowly put them in, I will go through them. But the next book I read was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars, and it was just a nice contemporary romance. I enjoyed the characters. They were just easy to read, fun to sort of see what happened and how, you know, the third act breakup came about and what happened and how they overcome that. So it was a good, easy palate cleanser between fantasies and things like that. So down the very bottom, I'm putting the ownership status of my books. So the categories are if I owned them, if I got it from Kindle Unlimited, if I borrowed the book from the library, or if I borrowed the book from Libby. So for this, I had 4 books that I physically owned. 2 books were from Kindle Unlimited, 3 books were from the library, and 1 book was from Libby. So sort of mixing it up there. The next book I read was A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallero. I really enjoyed this. I love Sherlock Holmes retelling, and I enjoyed seeing the perspective of Charlotte Holmes and Jamie Watson as younger teenagers. So they're 14, I believe, in this book. However, that does also concern me with some of the things that were happening in the book. Like, surely child welfare would have been involved with what was going on. But anyway, I enjoyed the mystery in it too. I think it read really easily and you could sort of see how things happened. It wasn't so out of the blue of who was the culprit and things like that. So I enjoyed it. The second pie chart up that we see is my series tracker. And for this, it shows whether I started a new series, I continued a new series, I finished a series, or if it was a standalone. And the stats for this were 6 books were starting a new series, 1 book was continuing, there were no finishes, and 3 were standalones. So I definitely need to do better at not starting new series and either continuing or finishing some series. But, you know, it's okay. It's only March. The next one up is the format that I read the book in. So physical, digital, audio only, or immersive. I read 2 physical books. I read 4 digital, 2 audios, and 2 immersively. So I am really loving immersive reading. I am thinking that's my preferred way of reading it just because I then know how to pronounce things. I feel like I'm more into the story and just in general having a really good time. The second from the top height chart is the audience. So there was 1 middle grade book, 3 YA books, 5 new adult books, and 1 adult read. And that's basically based on the age of the characters within it. That's how I sort of separate my young adult, new adult, and adult, just depending on where their age brackets fall. And then the very top pie chart is my star ratings. So I had 2 3.5 stars, 4 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 2 5 stars. So a pretty decent reading month. Anyway, up next was The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. This was the shortest book of the month, and it was good. It was very, very smut heavy, and it was definitely different. Um, I wasn't quite expecting it to be so uh sex heavy. But there's nothing wrong with that. It wasn't as much plot as I would have liked in it, and that's what sort of kept it at the 4-star rating. It was fine, it was good, but I would have liked a little bit more of a plot line in there rather than just being all about having sex with the different people, or different characters. Characters is probably a better word for it. And then I listened to The Dazzling Heights by Catherine McGee. This is the second book in the 1000th Floor series, and I don't think I've ever read the second one. I had read the first one before this year and then reread it, and then this was my first time reading the second one. So I like seeing the continuation of the characters as well as meeting a couple of new characters. It was nice getting a few new perspectives in there, and I found it really easy with the narrators to identify who is who and keep track of that, because that is sometimes an issue when you've got the same narrators and having to narrate different characters. But they did a pretty good job of being different characters and having different voices and accents and things like that. So I did enjoy it, but it's just a meh for me, like 3.5 stars. I wasn't as invested as the first book. I don't know, it might be because I only listened to it and wasn't actually reading it, but I think once again this just falls in the book is a little bit on the older side and it isn't quite my reading taste anymore. So I'm still interested in finishing up the series, but I think it's past my time for getting a higher rating. But that's okay. It might be for you. It just wasn't quite right for me nowadays. Definitely me like 10 years ago would have loved it. After that, I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which was my favorite book of the month. I absolutely devoured this. I loved it. I really enjoyed the writing. I loved the characters. I loved how there was moments of especially the males being genuinely sweet and having really nice relationships with females that aren't a romantic interest, and just being able to see how that goes and like you see that develop, but there's no romantic element to it. It's just having a pure friendship. So I really enjoyed that. The last book I read was Deep End by Ellie Hazelwood. I enjoyed this book. I liked the different character arcs on their own as well as their arc as a couple and how the relationship came about. I also enjoyed the fact that Scarlett had things that she was dealing with, and she was dealing with them outside of having to be in a relationship. Like she was sort of going to counseling, and then we see the issues that she's having being in counseling and how she's not being honest with her psychologist. And then when she is finally ready to talk about things, how she opens up. And I think that's a very real thing in life. We don't always feel comfortable at the time to open up to people, but then we come around and we then do sort of talk about things. And I just think that that was a really real look at going to counseling, really. And I really enjoyed reading about the positive way that exploring sexuality and bedroom fantasies was done in this. It wasn't done in a mocking manner. It was, done in a positive way that everyone has different things that they like to do in the bedroom, and that's fine as long as both people in the relationship are consenting. It's okay, and you're welcome to explore those, or you're also welcome to say no. And we saw that in one of the other relationships that didn't work out, and it's just because they weren't compatible in their sexual preferences, and that's totally fine. I will say, as I've said previously, I do think there are parts that could have been cut out, and I think the epilogue was definitely one of them. I wasn't overly a fan of it. I don't think it added anything to the story, so I could have just done without seeing them in the future. I kind of got the idea that they were, you know, gonna play happy family, so I didn't need it. But anyway, we are moving on to setting up my April spreads. So I'm going for this sort of more gothic skull books theme because April is Aurelium and the spring equinox term at Aurelium. So thought I would go into that sort of school vibes. And now I'm just setting up the calendar and spacing all that out so that I have a day to a page, or not a day to a page, a box for each day of the month that we can then put in what books I read over what days. So just going through and drawing all those lines. It does take a little bit, and even more so to go back in and put in all the numbers. Because of Aurelium, I am changing up how I do the layout for the months. So I am putting on an Aurelium spring equinox sign at the top, and I'm just going to use that space to list all the books for the subjects that I read during the month. And then down below have space for any other book club books, readathon books, and buddy reads books. So they've got their spot still, but I'm just sort of shifting the layout of it. I don't know how I feel about these layouts. I'm liking changing it up just to see what works, because at the moment I don't think I have a great layout that is really practical for what I want, but that's okay. And then just going in with some more decoration to help finish off these pages. And I'm going to flick forward to having all the numbers in as well. Putting in all of these numbers is definitely a time-consuming process, but that is my setup for April. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye!